Hello, and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the videos you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to buy your citizenship into the nation and be an actual citizen of the Rabyd Nation, your membership options are just there by hitting the join button. I always enjoy my paying citizens. Thank you very much. Today I want to kind of delve into the realm of rabid politics again. This time I'm looking at an article that came out today. This is November 15th. And it's an article entitled "The Role of Religion in Major Atrocity. Is it better to be a religious prostitute?" And I found myself so intrigued by the title that I decided I want to react to this thing a little bit. I'll leave the link to the article in the description. This article is by Samuel Koko Anyidoho. I hope I did not massacre that, and if I did, I do apologize. According to this article, he's the founder of the Adam Mills Institute and student of political theology. Now, this article is written as the idea of, because when he talks about religious prostitution, okay, what he's saying is, to put it in more basic form, and I'll read his definition in a little bit, but what he's saying in basic form is that what may be necessary is the ability of all faiths, basically, particularly those that hold to Abrahamic origins, out of personal violence to exchange worship. In other words, to be able to worship together without compromising faith they hold onto by day, nor abusing the faith they associate with night. And that's what he's terming as religious prostitution. In other words, you can hold to your faith very tightly while not abusing others of others' faiths. Okay? And I'm gonna kind of hit different parts of this article. I found some of it very interesting, but the idea of religious prostitution basically is we're not going to we're going to hold our own faith tightly, but not so much that we hate those of other faiths or we fight those of other faiths that we can even worship together. It's an article designed to basically say, hey, let's go forward with this idea of, getting along while each holding our own faiths as strongly as we want. Now, it sounds like a good idea, but I want to delve into the article because he starts with this idea. He says, the Abrahamic religions are faiths that trace their origin to the Israeli prophet Abraham. The three Abrahamic religions believe in a monotheistic God, that there is only one all-supreme being that is universally referred to as God. Monotheism is distinguished from henotheism, which is a religious system in which believers worship one God without denying the others may worship different gods with equal validity. I want to stop right there because my knowledge of the Old Testament is such that I realize that in the Old Testament, those that upheld the Abrahamic Hebrew God acknowledged that the other gods were there. They just felt theirs was superior. So I'm not sure that he understands that. I don't think the ancient writers made that kind of distinction. Probably one of my favorite examples of this is when the Ark of the Covenant gets captured by the Philistines and put before the prophet Dagon. And then Dagon is found the next day, fall down, prostrated before the altar, and so on. And a lot of other things begin to happen to the Philistines, so much so that they send the Ark back to the Israelites. But the story doesn't make any sense unless Dagon is actually a real god that actually bows down to the Hebrew God, which is something that they, I think, did believe in. I think it makes a lot more sense that henotheism is exactly what was being discussed in the Old Testament, and that the Old Testament God of Yahweh was just the big one. So I get what he's saying because he's coming at it from a standpoint of these are the three monotheistic religions. And then he talks about some of the verses of scripture that he says, like the Mosaic commandments prohibit murder. Why? Because people are made in the image of God, and everybody is admonished to love your neighbor as yourselves. The Quran, he talks about there's a compassionate light to religion and just light to religion. There is no compassion in no compulsion in religion, I should say. 256. Submission to God must be freely chosen, not forced. That's in the Quran. Quran urges Muslims to use beautiful preaching to persuade people to accept Islam and to argue nicely with Jews and Christians who are seen as worshiping the same God as their own. Okay, so everybody's kind of worshiping the same God, so why is it that we fight so much? Why can't we religiously prostitute ourselves in the sense that we're going to let the other religions have their sway, hold fast to our own, but be very tolerant of the others? Now, he brings up a fact in here that I want to talk about. It says, according to the Encyclopedia of Wars, out of the 1,763 known recorded historical conflicts, 121 of those, 6.87%, have religion as their primary cause. Now, the first thing I want to question here is, okay, primary cause, but what about secondary and tertiary causes? I would say that if you added as a secondary or a tertiary cause a much larger number, religion always seems to be putting its foot in conflict. And so I think it's not so much dishonest, but he's trying to, at one, say, yeah, it's a bad problem, but he's minimizing it by saying only the primary cause. Religion has been a secondary and tertiary cause in many wars. And so I get what he's saying, because he's trying to sit here and say, it's not as big a problem as we think it is. All we have to do is back off a little bit, stop, getting in each other's faces about our individual religions, and yet hold fast to our own religion, okay? And he's calling that religious prostitution, okay? Everybody preaches peace. They also preach war. And this is something that he is trying to bring out in the article, but I almost think he minimizes it too much. Because as much as he wants to say that the extremists don't have ammunition in bringing about peace, it's at this point in the article that it kind of took a little bit of a turn for me, because I'm like, now wait a minute. You quote verses about peace and getting along and everything else. Well, then you get to this point and you don't quote the verses that cause them to fight each other, because in the same Quran, in the same Hebrew text, in the same New Testament text, there's very exclusive clauses. Christianity, Jesus is saying, no man comes to the Father but through me. So that has justified Christians saying, hey, we're the one true faith. Islam has many similar things in the Quran. You have Judaism much saying that, any other God but Yahweh being worshipped is idolatry. So the idea of worshiping together when everybody might be serving actually different gods. See, he's trying to make the statement that all the God is the same, but I'm saying no, henotheism is probably more likely with these gods, that they are not the same God. It's the same concept of an individual deity, but I don't think he's getting the fact that when you really look at these religions and break down their specifics, there is a lot of oil doesn't mix with water. There just is you can be in the same place, but you're just not compatible. So they, he talks about what we call selective amnesia, where people have, passages that contradict their preconceived beliefs. But I think he's engaged in a preconceived belief that all of these things are headed towards this end where you could simply, worship together, but not necessarily give up your individualized faith. But, he tries to bring out like Romans 12:19, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. The idea that, letting God handle the justice department. He does make up he does talk about the religious extremism in a single parable, the apartheid, the Yugoslavia war, the Holocaust, the current war in Gaza. He talks about, how this religious extremism has led to all this war. So isn't it better to have an alternative form of religious prostitution where we're going to hold to the unifying factors of faith while ignoring the outside factors of that make us different. Now, I'm glad, for one, that he acknowledged the fact that, for instance, the Holocaust is an act of religious extremism. Okay, it was not an atheist act. Hitler was not an atheist. He was a Roman Catholic, and that's something that needs to be restated over and over. He was a creationist. The form of evolution that he believed in was certainly not Darwinian. And, atheists have brought this up over and over and over. And so I'm glad to see one author is at least acknowledging, at least by not harping on that bell, that the Holocaust was indeed religious extremism. It's about time some religious figure said so. Okay, but you have this idea of religious prostitution, the ability of all faiths to be able to exchange worship without compromising the faith that they hold on by day, nor abusing the faith they associate with night, the various faiths they associate with night. And he's focusing particularly on the Abrahamic religions. Basically, the idea is focusing on the compassionate side of all faiths, mercy, justice, and opening up a lot to discourse. It's a very good opening thing, and then he's like opposing the very vehement idea of we got to, in the name of our clannishness and our religious faith, we got to kill and slaughter the other side. And he talks about Ghana, so I'm assuming he's in Ghana and he's a Ghana author. And Ghana's political situation is steeped in religion just as well as much as anything else. He says that he's, as a student of Platonic school of theological political thought, I have the firmest conviction that a proper understanding of the divine nature is crucial and essential in finding human virtue and lasting happiness within the time-space of our imperial human existence in this earth realm. And that's where his theology really comes out in this. And, he talks about seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Now, do I have some problems with this article? Yeah, I do. Number one, the Abrahamic religions, by their nature, each one of them has things that are very strongly. You can sit there and talk about the extremism of the fundamentalists all you want, but that extremism is justified because the very holy books that you're citing for all these wonderful, nice things. I mean, let's just take the fact that all of these religions except the Old Testament, and the Old Testament literally has several genocides ordered by God, okay, and the Israelis committed those genocides, okay. Now, I'm not blaming current politics of that. When we look at biblical history, a lot of it's not history, it's quite frankly made up. But you have those aspects of all these religions that have those verses, that have the thing that say, go fight your enemies. It's okay to fight your enemies, okay. Jesus' own words, I haven't come to bring peace but a sword, and then make sure that at least two of the apostles at the dinner table had a couple swords. There were the understanding of that they were going to rise up and kick out the Romans. So you have, Judaism, Christianity certainly has it, especially when you look at the end of the book in Revelation, when you look at some of the words of Jesus. There's just this idea that violence is permissible in certain situations. I'm not as well up on the Quran, but I know that the Quran has verses, that are very controversial about killing their enemies and so forth. And the idea of suicide bombers, the idea of, martyrdom in the Islamic faith is very strong, and it came from somewhere, and it came from the Quran. Okay? So the problem I have is what you're doing, secondly, is you're also selectively picking and choosing what parts of these traditions that you want to uphold. But doesn't that kind of indicate something else? doesn't it indicate that there is a higher ethic that's above your scriptures that says this is wrong and this is right, and you judge your scriptures by those things? Okay, one, it's kind of a subjective thing, but let's also understand at that point you're also saying that perhaps human virtue by itself can judge these various scriptural traditions and go, yeah, that's okay, and yeah, that's crap. Okay? And I'm going to be honest, religious prostitution here sounds really good because it at least leads to peace. But my problem with it is you're still basing it on texts that religious extremists are going to always point to the other passages and say, yeah, that's what it says, but it also says this. And the question then becomes, why are you picking the one and not the other? Why are you right to religiously prostitute yourself? And they're saying, no, I'm not going to be a religious prostitute. I'm going to live up to what my faith says to do, and I'm going to fight my enemies. And you're the one that's saying, well, this is better because it leads to peace and justice. Well, it seems like peace and justice and prosperity then are human virtues that override the scriptural nonsense. Okay, and so, I remember when I used to be this way. And the reason I'm bringing up this particular article is because I could have written the same kind of article 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, where I felt, why can't we just practice our faith without being mean and nasty to the rest of them? And now I would say, you can't do it. You're either going to be the religious prostitute and do that, or you're going to be a genuine, certified, honest believer and be a fundamentalist Christian, Islamic, or whatever, and do the things that you're supposed to do. And I find political theology interesting because we're acknowledging that theology has had a great deal of influence on certain political thought. But here, I've got a better one for you. Why don't you drop the Abrahamic religions altogether, become a secular state, protect all people of all beliefs, and not make it a big deal anymore? Why don't you realize that this is all a bunch of fantasy and make-believe and get rid of it? Okay, as an atheist, I'm looking at this and said, number one, I think your body count, your war count of how many conflicts are primarily religious is a little bit low. I'm going to say that maybe what you're considering secondary or somebody's considering secondary might be primary in other people's eyes. And even if you take all that, religion being a part of conflicts, yeah, a good majority of the conflicts probably have some weaving of religion into them of why the war is taking place. Abraham is not a great prophet to follow, in my humble opinion. He's a psycho who almost killed his kid. We can't even really prove that he existed. Okay, and so you're following after these legends, and because of these legends and these fairy tales and all this other stuff, you're killing each other. But at least the fundamentalist extremist is being honest about what his book says in total. You're trying to edit out all the bad stuff and only uphold the stuff that you like. Well, that tells me that within yourself, you have a human virtue, a human ethic that is saying, this is crap, let's exalt this good stuff. Well, why do you call it better than the other if it's both inspired by God? If the Quran is inspired by God, why are you saying, we need to follow these verses, but there are other verses that you don't want to follow? And so on and so forth. Kudos for recognizing some of these things are religiously based, including the Holocaust. A lot of other theists don't recognize that. That's good work. But I think you're still going to have the problem. You haven't proposed a solution. Because, I have a better one. Quit prostituting yourself and just be honest about your faith, the fact that it's, make-believe. Okay, and once you get to that point, then you don't have a reason to kill anybody anymore. I'm going to be honest. The moment I lost my faith, I lost a lot of reasons to hate and be against some people. Just like that. I didn't have any reason to hate anybody anymore. The only thing that gets me irate now is the actions of others, and the problem is most of the bad actions I see in the world are done with people in the name of God. Okay, and I just don't have time for that. The problem I have with your solution of religious prostitution, at least it's honest. I'm not, you're being honest that it's prostitution. because you know full well that your book doesn't support what you're saying. Okay? It doesn't say in the Christian Gospels, hey man, just spread the word around, and it's all good. No, Jesus has to go the extra mile and say, if they don't answer you, shake the dust off their feet. It'll be better for the Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than these towns. That doesn't sound like a good thing, okay? Let's be honest about little Jesus, meek and mild. There would be no doctrine of hell. There would be no understanding of final judgment in that sense without Jesus. Okay, there would be no understanding of people rejecting the message of the gospel, thus ending up condemning themselves even further into some pit, lake of fire, whatever. Okay, so let's get rid of this notion that somehow we can divide our Bible or Quran or whatever in half and pull out the stuff that lines up with the goodness of human virtue, is what you're really saying. That doesn't have to come from God. And you're discarding, you're kind of pushing aside and minimizing the stuff in all those books that you don't want to deal with. Okay, let's be real here. You're engaged in a massive amount of eisegesis. You're engaged in a massive amount of selective taking what you want and getting rid of the rest of it. Samuel, I think you've written an interesting article here, and I'm glad that you acknowledged a few things. But I got a better one for you. Dump it. Dump the Abrahamic religions. I mean, come on. You're sitting there talking about the prophet Abraham. The prophet Abraham's most notable act is that he almost killed his kid because he believed God told him to. I'm sorry, if you saw one of your neighbors dragging off one of their kids, God told me to slay this kid, to get his promises, you would have to say, because Abraham's an example of that, you'd have to let the guy go. I don't let him go. I grab him and say, you're a nut. Here, kid, go to social services or whatever because your parents are crazy. Okay, that's what I would say. But the Abrahamic religions still have this, we're hearing from God, so it justifies any action that we have in their brain. And the problem is this is also hitting politics. It still hits it today. I mean, whether the religious conflict in Israel has religion as its primary basis, the foundation of religion has long been laid in that conflict. It's still there. And it's thinking like this, that, if I just, prostitute myself and not stand up fully for the faith that's in my holy book, then we could live in peace. But that tells you that you have to basically diminish the commands of God that are in other places, diminish his understanding of exclusiveness, particularly for Christianity and Islam in particular. You're going to have to get rid of a lot of things in order to maintain that. And I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I got a better solution for you. Give up the religious nonsense and become secular. Get rid of it. Lose your reasons to have conflict in the first place. Just dump it. Get rid of it. Well, I'm interested in everybody's thoughts on this one. You can go read the article. I'll link it in the description. I just found it very interesting, this idea of religious prostitution. And yeah, you're right. You are religiously prostituting yourself. I got a better one for you. Stop being a prostitute. Dump it. Join the rest of us that are suddenly realizing that all of this is wonderful, glorious fiction that has led us down a primrose path to violence and death. And the world would be better without it. We need to get rid of reasons to be tribalistic except about one tribe, the tribe known as humanity, okay? And, religion is getting in the way of that. And it would be better if it disappeared. It really would. Well, thank you once again for stopping by. I appreciate every single one of you. It's been an interesting Wednesday. I've really appreciated looking into this. I think this is an interesting idea that this person, Samuel here, proposes. But I think, it doesn't show the full breadth of thought that is required to really grasp the entire situation. It's a lot worse than he's making it out. And the solution probably has to be a lot more drastic, like dumping faith altogether. Thanks again for stopping by. Like, share, subscribe, do the things you do. And as always, make sure you're living your best life. You only get one go around, so make it a good one. Make it a happy one. Live for yourself. Live for the people that are in your life. Live to do good. But what you don't need to live for is any religion. Don't waste your time, your money, your opportunities following the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. And I know that from personal experience. So thank you once again for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.